Hello, welcome to this week's edition of the MMA Freak Fighter of the Week. I'm Matt Salzer. I'm going to talk about UFC 220, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about Bellator 192. I think it was 192. Yeah, 192, Bellator 192. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. There were no real big names on UFC 220 except for the two title fights. Stipe is the fighter of the week because he broke the UFC title defense record. In terms of the heavyweight division, and it also goes to show how competitive the UFC heavyweight division has always been. 2 defenses. No fighter has defended the title more than 2 times. That's how competitive it's always been, whether it was smaller, more competitive heavyweights, or whether it was the behemoth times, like when Brock Lesnar was defending, or whether it was more middle of the line guys, like it's kind of been in more recent years. It's just always been a competitive division, and it's no fighter's been able to defend the championship more than 2 times. Very different compared to most of the other, like all of the other weight classes. There's been every other weight class has had more than 2 title defenses. The only exception being the UFC women's featherweight division, because it's that weight class just hasn't been doing so well. And everyone was saying, and I thought too, I definitely knew Francis Ngannou had a chance. I was siding with Stipe though, because exactly like it went, he had the experience, he had the wrestling ability, and he used that, and he also he just had the better skills, and I'm kind of surprised he gassed. I'm surprised he gassed as much as he did. It must have been during that first round, but he gassed, Francis gassed, and I think this is the first time that Ngannou's actually been taken out of the first round, let alone into the championship rounds the way that he was. And that being said, it's not surprising that Stipe was. They gave all the rounds to Stipe. There were a few that were maybe close, but ultimately they just gave him all to Stipe. I think they gave him at least 1, possibly 2 10-8 rounds, depending on the judge. I don't know what's going on with me. But, there's still plenty of fighters that he could definitely face. Let's see, he's beat Overeem, beat Junior Dos Santos, Ngannou, Werdum. The only fighter I can think of that he has not faced yet would probably be Kane. And the thing is, as Cain Velasquez just hasn't been that healthy of a fighter over the past few years. That's why we've seen very little of him, as compared to Stipe. Stipe has been a healthy fighter. That's why he was able to win and then defend the title, and that's why everything's gone the way it has for him. So we will definitely see how this goes. Yeah, we'll definitely see how this goes. It's just I said there's some contenders, but realistically, outside of Kane, I don't see too many other fighters, because like I said, he beat Junior, beat beat Overeem, beat Francis, beat Verdum. So, yeah, Kane's pretty much the only guy, and a lot of people were predicting that Kane was like the guy who was the future of the division, and now here's Stipe rising above and being the future of the division, and Ngannou still has time. This is one of those things where he's gonna have to go back and reassess, the way he's been doing things. But I do believe that it's possible that Francis Ngannou could still be a what is that? It is still possible that Francis Ngannou could very well be a champion someday. It's just not now. So yeah, that's that. Then Cormier, there was just no doubt. He just went in there and finished Volkan Ozdemir. And his in the post fight interview, him saying I've won the vacant title. That's a very appropriate way of putting it. Is that I mean, you could consider the title vacated after John Jones was stripped of it a third time. But either way, it was nice to see him win that. And then there was there were some other fights, but that was just one of those things where it was really hard to talk about any other fighters aside from the top two. And this was just one of those times where, the rising contenders just did not prevail, and the established veterans prevailed. So, the Bellator 192, I'm just going to talk about the top two, again, the top two fight. I think we'll talk about maybe Chandler too, but anyways. So, the main fight was Rampage versus Kale, and I'm surprised that Rampage was as big as he is and didn't look fat. I mean, he kind of had a little bit of a gut, but you could tell that thing was solid. That was not a that wasn't like fat there. Man, 253. He looked huge. He's a big guy. I think there's a reason why he went up to that weight class. But something that a coworker of mine talked about and that I definitely agree with is that Rampage and BJ are two fighters who, if they have a guide and they have someone bringing them accountable and the right coaching and stuff like that, those fighters are indestructible. The problem is they historically have not always had that type of coaching. I mean, we saw that with BJ. I mean, at one point, he won titles in both weight classes. He was ruling the lightweight division at one point. Rampage won the UFC light heavyweight championship and then defended it once. But these are two guys who just, if you let them get out of hand, let's just say, they will. They're two very talented fighters, but just can't put together sometimes. Now, Kale did what we were just expecting. He went out there and he wrestled, and he beat a guy who's better on his feet. That's what he did, and he moves on, and he will fight I think the way the bracket's set up, he will fight the winner of the Fedor Mir, which, to be perfectly honest, it's like these are two guys who really should be retired, and I don't know which one's gonna come away with it. I really don't. And it also goes to show that the Now, a lot of people were saying Bobby Lashley should have been this Grand Prix, but recent events have actually made sense in that he might be going back to the WWE. So, yeah, no more, no Bobby Lashley there. But anyways, so we'll just see how the rest of the heavyweight tournament goes. This really should have taken place sooner to actually get a tournament to crown the vacant championship. The championship's been vacated for such a long time. So next I'll talk about the welterweight championship, Douglas Lima versus Rory McDonald. That was a close fight. That was a really close fight. I honestly was expecting Lima to come away with it, but the judges saw it another way. I could definitely see why they decided to do it that way instead of Rory, but Rory had to fight for that. He had to fight for that. Because he came away with a bloody face again, and he had that contusion. He couldn't even walk back to the locker room. He had that contusion. His shin was all swollen up. So, but either way, it's nice to see him win the welterweight championship. It kind of adds it adds a little bit more credibility. That I'm not saying that Douglas Lima was not a credible fighter, but he he hasn't fought in the UFC. So, and I honestly don't think he's really fought a ranked fighter. So the fact that we had that, it was nice to see that. It was definitely nice to see Rory win the championship. But anyways, then the last thing I'm going to talk about was Michael Chandler versus Gato Miocic, I think was that fighter. He's been in a few fights. This was a classic case of BJJ versus wrestling, and if you utilize wrestling in the right way, you wrestling and striking, you can outdo BJJ. That's just how it goes. I mean, BJJ is more of a it's more of a passive grappling martial art, whereas wrestling is more of an aggressive grappling martial art, and that's how it happened. And it's nice, like I said, it's nice for Chandler to get that that W after that very unfortunate loss. That was a freak accident, how he lost the title. It was a freak accident. So, but yeah, that was this weekend. So it was nice to see some history being made and some big names. And I think it was a good first major fight. I haven't seen the numbers. Like, I haven't seen if... because this is the first time that Bellator and the UFC have gone head-to-head for a while. I haven't seen the numbers yet. Let me just look it up quickly. Let's see, 1.3 million views was Bellator 120. Or 192. Let's see what, see, I'm not seeing the, okay, let's see the, Let's see. I'm not seeing the numbers yet for UFC 220, but Bellator did 1.3 million views, and with a pay-per-view, even though it was two good fighters, I don't think it was unfortunately unfortunately two champions who aren't the biggest draws on headlining a fight card that just was not that well stacked with big names. So I'm willing to say that Bellator probably claimed the night, and that's the thing, is that they're smart, and that in these head-to-head broadcasts they're putting big names on their fight cards, and you can't really watch. You can't really compare that with a pay-per-view unless you've got a big name on pay-per-view like Conor or Ronda Rousey, and we don't know when we're going to see those two in the UFC, if ever again. I mean, there's talks about stripping Conor because he's just gone so far, and supposedly Ronda Rousey's going to make her debut in the WWE Women's Royal Rumble. So either way, we'll see how things go. And yeah, that's it. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Follow me at Matthew Salzer. I'm doing personal vlogs a lot more recently. That's kind of why I haven't put as much into this as I have. Because I'm just doing other stuff right now. But yeah, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. At Matthew Salzer, that's me. At MMA Freakout. These are both Twitter handles. Is the MMA Freak. MMA-freak.com. That's the website for exclusive content. I'm Matthew MMA Freak. See you next time.